Aloha, paddlers. Welcome to the Lazy Paddler Investor Show. Today I'm going to talk about the investor's mindset and how I link together everything from buying socks, reading books, to buying shares in my favorite companies. My name is Harlan Bea, and this show is about helping everyone become a better long-term investor, to share how I think about investing and how I think about the future. I'm an individual investor, and these opinions are my own. I'm not speaking for any companies I work for or manage, and I may own shares in the companies I'm going to discuss on my shows. So I do not recommend that you buy or sell any of the stocks I discuss. Remember, always do your own research and make your own decisions about your own investments. So, if you like this content, like the video, smash that subscribe button, please. Also, let me know in the comments below what types of investing topics you'd like me to cover in the future. So, let's kick this off. Let's set off through the cobwebs in my mind and see what's lurking back there. So, one of the things that is kind of a pet peeve for me when I think about investing in general as a concept is that there are lots of folks out there who want to explain investing as a financial thing only. That it's about buying something that's going to appreciate in value later on, and then you'll have the opportunity to sell it, or at least it will be worth more to you. Maybe you can pass it on to other people. Maybe it's just something that you can sell and get money from. Things like stocks, bonds, maybe even things like baseball cards or collectibles, art, that sort of thing, right? Real estate, manufacturing equipment, that sort of thing. Things that you put money into and you think that you can get something out of afterwards. That's the kind of, I'm going to call it the basic understanding of investment that you would probably get when you look at a place like Investopedia and you're like, what is investing? Like, what is the definition of that? And from a sort of English language understanding point of view, I mean, yeah, that's what it is. Sure. But in its most simplified form, I think about investing as putting in with the intention of getting back, right? And it's not restricted for me to things like the ones that I just listed. And so one of the things I talk about when I work with interns and we're starting to work on selecting companies and stuff like that is I actually walk them through this kind of concept of thinking about everything that we do as an investment. And the reason for that is because there is a direct linkage between human effort as represented by time and money, right? So when you think about what money is used for, what money means, there's actually a fantastic YouTube video on this. I'm going to try to find it, and I'm going to link it in the comments section below, or link it in the description if I can find it. I believe I've saved it. Hopefully it's still out there. They go through a very long discussion, kind of breaking down this concept. So I'm going to summarize it very quickly. You'll probably get the gist of it from what I'm saying. You don't pay your dog. Sure, you buy it food, right? You'll buy your dog or cat food. You'll take them and do stuff for them, but you don't pay your dog. Your dog's not asking you for money. If you have a machine in your machine shop and it stamps pieces of metal that you then used to manufacture a car or something, right? You don't pay that piece of equipment. It's a machine. It doesn't need anything from you. It's not conscious even as much as a dog, cat, or other animal, right? And it's not ever going to ask you for money or union dues or, or better work conditions, right? It's gonna occasionally complain in that it might start squealing and you need to oil it, or you need to brush off the rust and clean it up, but it's never gonna ask you for money. The only entities that ask other entities for money are human beings. For now, we'll that we know of, right? So I'm a big believer in life on other planets. Not saying that they're here. I'm not like, lizard people do not live among us. As far as I have not seen any evidence that shows that lizard beings live among us. I have not seen convincing evidence that like there's an active extraterrestrial presence on the planet right now. However, I do believe that we should not be naive about thinking that we're the only people in the universe, right? But entities that can kind of think at this level that we can, and would appreciate having like an economy to help them get recognition and supplant some of their effort. That's super important, right? So the idea that time, human time and money should be paid for so that we can then take the money that we got, give it to somebody else, and then that person is getting paid for their time and money. That's essentially economy in a sort of really simplified form, right? Without all the hoo-ha that goes along with it, right? At its most basic at its most basic level, it's basically human effort and the time it takes to do something, the expertise it takes to do something, and you get paid for that, right? And then you're like, well, I don't like making hamburgers, so I'm going to pay someone else to make me a burger. So you go to In-N-Out and you buy a burger from the folks at In-N-Out. Capitalism, right? Cool. All right. So hopefully we can agree on that. Again, I'm going to try to link a more detailed and very nice video that helped me think through all of this down below. But if we kind of take that and we're like, all right, well, if money is the same as human effort, if they're essentially interchangeable, shouldn't we be thinking about investing as anything we spend our time on, anything we spend our effort on? So saving money is essentially saving the results of your human effort, right? But we can do lots and lots of different things with our efforts. We can spend that money in specific ways. We can make decisions about the things that we do that affect the world around us, right? And so every time we make a decision about how we spend our time, how we spend our effort, how we spend our money, all of those things have the potential to yield us future results. All of those things have that potential. So, I mean, the first things everybody needs, sort of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs set, right? Air. We've got to be able to breathe. You can't breathe, you're not going to be around very long. Food, water, right? We have to keep processing. Got to keep the brain running, right? Safety, clothes, shelter, and I'm going to add to that family ties and close friends, right? We have to keep our bodies healthy and we have to keep our minds intact, right? So if you lose these things, it is vitally important to get them back. They are the bedrock. They are the bedrock on which all other things that we do as human beings grow, right? So they are literally investments in yourself, right? If you don't have healthy food to eat, you're going to become sick or starve. If you don't have healthy water, you're going to become sick or dehydrated, die of thirst, right? And I mean healthy water, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about activism and voting. We have to have proper shelter. I'm not saying that you have to have a fucking mansion or something like that, right? But do what you can to get shelter. Do what you can to stay close with your family. Do what you can to stay close with your friends. I understand that not everyone can do these things. And that is why the world is sometimes a horrible place, right? But when I think about investing, these things come first because the results, if you do not have them, are profoundly negative, right? So I'm not naive again here. Like, having these things is not always possible for every person. Sometimes you're going to lose one of them. You may lose your close family ties. You may lose access to food. But what we don't want to do, right? What we don't want to do is like have the experience where we're trying to misallocate our efforts. So for example, let's say you lose both shelter and access to food. First order of business is getting access to food back. Second order of business is probably getting your shelter back. Unless you're in a situation where conditions are very harsh. So maybe you can wait on the food, but it's so cold, you need access to shelter ASAP, right? So a lot of these things are very conditional, right? And it takes an understanding of your situation, where you are, and a certain amount of situational awareness, I guess, to decide, where you're going to put your efforts and when and how. Okay, so let's say you've kind of established these things. You've got the things that you need, or at least basically, you're stable enough where you can kind of move on to the next level. Then and only then should you talk about things like savings, saving cash, building an emergency fund, investing in things, paying off loans, that sort of thing, right? Those things come much, much later, right? But there's a lot of stuff that is sort of in between that hopefully we all can get to participate in. And there are things that I would recommend, sort of like intermediary steps that we should take, especially when we're young, but not always. Some things are like lifelong, and some things are not, right? So these are basically ways that we spend our time. So like once you've got those sort of basics down, then I feel like the next step is really doing two things, investing in your personal growth and investing in community growth. So, and and then income generation for yourself, right? So it's sort of triumvirate kind of things that you're going to be doing kind of simultaneously from each other, unless you're young and you can't work yet. But once you kind of get to the point where you're able to generate income, you should start doing that if you need it, when you need it, right? So personal growth on that side, reading, I'm going to say, is by far the most important thing. Going to school is also important. So, like, stay in school, kids. But embedded in school is this idea of reading and acquiring knowledge, right? And in my opinion, the best way to acquire knowledge through reading is by reading fiction. I would then, like, in the order of sort of like the kinds of things that I would recommend someone reading if they want to have a good understanding of the world around them, is reading fiction first, reading news about technology, industry, entertainment, things like that, things about pop culture, things about the world around them, but like good things, like positive things, science, news, that sort of thing. And then after that, nonfiction books. And there's a reason why I put them here, and I'll maybe discuss it. And then after that, news about politics, and then after that, news about what I'll call horrors, or basically like the things that make you angry. News about things that make you angry. So the reason why I order it like this is because fiction, for those of you who like fiction, is going to be the most accessible, easy, and I'm going to say truthful, right? So just because something is nonfiction does not mean it is true. In fact, most nonfiction books that you will find in a bookstore or online bookshelves are actually not really like reporting, like they're not attempting to be, they're opinion pieces. They're basically very long opinion pieces. Like imagine like somebody taking the opinion page from the newspaper that you hate and just making a 300-page book about their opinions. That's what nonfiction really is. And so when you're reading nonfiction, you're bathing yourself into somebody else's opinions. Kind of like you're bathing yourself in my opinions right now. Nonfiction is basically it can be helpful in some ways. And if you're reading like a technology kind of thing, if you're reading manuals and stuff like that, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about that kind of nonfiction. I would consider that sort of like manuals and instructions and stuff like that. You can read that all you want, but it's not going to teach you how to communicate with people. That's sort of like a subset of nonfiction. I would say, yeah, that's fine. You can do it. But it's more in building skills. I'm going to talk about it in income generation. So it's a little further on. But if you want to learn to talk to people, if you want to learn what makes people tick, if you want to learn how people's emotional responses work, if you want to learn how to work with your boss later, if you want to learn how to work with employees, if you want to learn how to work with students, if you want to learn how to get along with another person, a significant other, if you want to learn how to get along with your family better, fiction, particularly romances and science fiction and fantasy and stuff like this, fantastic stuff, right? Fantastic. Because they're about human emotions, human capacity for all kinds of different behaviors, right? And they examine things that you simply don't get to examine much in school outside of maybe a literature class. And I definitely recommend reading things by modern authors. So reading things by older authors is going to immerse you in a world of archaic thought. It's okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you know what you're getting into, right? But reading things by older authors is going to not have the same level of social understanding that we have today. Humanity has come a long way. Reading something even from 100 years ago, I mean, it's going to be much more racist, much more misogynistic. Their understanding of things like how the world works, how economies work, how technology works is going to be very simplistic compared to even the understanding of a teenager today, right? A teenager today has so much more complex world knowledge than I would say even a 50-year-old person from 1920. Your your median person, you know, far superior knowledge coming out of our people today, right? Because you can simply get information much easier. It comes to you from so many different sources, and it's easier to ingest, and like we're just very knowledgeable, especially compared to people 100, 200 years ago. Like there's not a lot of yeah, so try to read people who are relatively recent authors, and then try to stay away from those things that are antagonistic, right? Read a lot. It's going to be great for you. You're going to be able to, and in what the language of your choice, right? Especially if you're trying to learn another language, read. Expose yourself to as much of that as you possibly can. Invest in yourself and your language capacity. It's super cool, super helpful. And invest in that emotional knowledge that you get from fiction. Invest in the tech and industry knowledge you get from industry news. Invest in that knowledge that you get from nonfiction about particular things that you're interested in, politics or whatever, right? Those are things that while you may forget them, you have the capacity to take them with you from the rest of your life. And you can form mental models from that kind of exposure. So reading is super critical. With some caveats, I would also recommend like sort of documentaries and other kind of informative shows. So YouTube, or pick your distributor of choice, Netflix or whatever. It's fine. But remember that you're not getting the same level of mind conditioning from watching a show as you would reading a book. So if you later on need to write for work, knowing how paragraphs and sentences are structured and punctuated and what formal writing is like and what a well-edited document is like comes from hours, hundreds of thousands of hours of reading. You just got to do it. It's mandatory. You can't shortcut that. You have to just do it. You have to build it in there, especially if you're learning multiple languages. Okay, so personal growth. That's one investing side. So it's like, cool. That goes through your entire life. You're going to do school for part of it, but a vast majority of what you're going to get from school is your reading, right? So it's a subset. Then community support is next. And then we'll talk about income generation. So community support is like what you're doing with your efforts and what you're doing with your money. So, and it's broader than just like, hey, I donate to this nonprofit that I really like. I donate to this organization that does good work that I appreciate, right? So if you want to donate to Planned Parenthood, for example, that will help people get reproductive health services throughout the United States. That's a sort of simplistic way of just donating money and having activism that you support. Okay, great. That's one way of doing it. There are many other ways of doing it. So one of the things that a lot of people don't maybe think about initially is that buying quality products and buying products that are made ethically is very important. You may end up paying more for buying those things. But when you do, you're supporting behaviors of other people who have similar views to you. That's the idea. That's the idea of like buying quality, buying for a purpose or activism, right? So let's say you you want to buy a book to read, right? You know authors. Maybe you follow some authors on Twitter, or you follow, or you're just a fan of some authors that you really like, and new books are coming out all the time. But the next book you're going to read, there's probably just one that you're going to read for the next week. Okay, depending on, how fast you read or whatever. What book are you going to buy? Are you going to buy that book based solely upon your entertainment value? Are you going to buy it because of entertainment value plus you actually believe that that person who is writing the book, their heart's in the right place and they have similar values to you? Maybe they do activism that you support. Balancing these things is important, right? So a lot of people will be like, oh, well, we should not buy from such and such company because they're doing X, Y, or Z. Almost always there is a really complex feedback system happening there. So I would say with regard to choosing the companies that you buy from, choose wisely and don't think about price alone. If you always are thinking about price alone, then the world is going to be full of Walmarts and Amazons and who else is really chintzy based on price? Oh my gosh. Like Ross Dress for Less, that sort of thing. Like basically, you're if all you're doing is saying, I'm going to buy the cheapest thing, the thing that's the most on sale, the thing that's just there and I can use it for right now. Couple of things you're saying. First is you're saying, I believe that I am worth that thing. That thing and I go together. That cheapest thing is the thing that I'm going to put in my house. That cheapest thing is the thing I'm going to put on my body. That cheapest thing is the thing I'm going to eat. That cheapest thing is the thing I'm going to put on my head, in my hair. And that's not going to leave a great impression on other folks. Now, if you have to, and so I would make obviously a caveat with this. Buy quality, buy what you can afford, right? So if you have a choice between 3 different shirts you can buy, and one of them is really expensive, and you're like, and it's sort of from a shishi store, and you're like, it's really pretty, I'd like it, but it's very expensive. And then another shirt where you're like, oh, that shirt's okay, it looks nice, and it's sort of reasonable price. And then you're like, well, that shirt's kind of junk, but, well, it's only $5. That shirt that's kind of junk may be a shirt that disintegrates in the first wash, right? It may not have proper stitching. It may, you may get it home and you find that all the colors have just run off of it again when it gets wet. Like, you're taking a risk when you buy the cheapest thing. You're also taking a risk when you buy the most expensive thing, right? Because, like, you may not like that shirt that much later on. And what are you going to do with it if it's, like, super fancy? Like, buying quality, like buying a good quality shirt at a fair price, I'd say is, the best way to go. And there's purpose in that, right? So you're encouraging that company. You're encouraging the company that makes the quality shirt and asks a fair price for it. If you encourage the company that asks $5 for a shirt and its stitches are all bad and maybe they're like abusing labor in Vietnam or something like that to get these super cheap shirts out to you, it's like, well, what are you encouraging? Do you really want that for the world? Do you really want those kinds of behaviors to be supported? Because that company is going to stay in business, and that company that makes the quality shirt is going to be like, oh, we don't seem to have any customers. It seems like we're being outcompeted by a cheap shirt company, right? So buying quality is important. And I would say it's probably more important than your donations. Unless you are a very rich person and you make substantial amounts of donations, more donations than you spend on like your expenses for the year, like your personal expenses. If you spend more money on donations than you do on personal expenses, then yeah, donations, you probably need to give them more thought. But if you spend a considerable amount of time thinking about a $100 donation, but no time thinking about buying dinner at like a restaurant that you don't really like, and you spend $100 for your family on 5 meals at $20 each, and you all come out and you're like, oh, that kind of sucked. It's basically the same $100, right? And you supported a restaurant that served junky food. Maybe had bad service, right? So like, what do you want to do with your money? Where do you want to go? And chances are most people are going to spend much more money buying things like food, gas, cars, clothes, that sort of thing during the year than they do spending money on activism or purpose-driven stuff. So thinking about where that money goes is an investment in your community, right? Because that money, when you spend money, you're telling those people in those companies, hey, I like your product. Keep doing that. That's awesome, right? And then they can take that money that they made and they can pay themselves, they can pay their employees, they can pay their contractors, and then they can reinvest, make more of those things, those same types of things, and sell it to more folks. Be conscious about how you spend your money, and you're essentially investing in your community and the people around you and the world around you, right? I'm not one of those people who feels like, hey, we shouldn't buy something because it's made in another country. I think that's great that we have stuff coming from all over the world to the United States or vice versa, right? I'm not I'm not like isolationist in that sense. Like it's fantastic that we're interconnected. It actually helps us stave off things like wars, right? Like imagine right now with all the things that are going on with China, if we were not so economically interconnected with China, what might happen? Countries that are isolated, like Iran and North Korea, are by far more dangerous because they are isolated from the rest of the world. They're forced to do everything on their own. There is no economic incentive for them to sort of stay peaceful, right? So the saber rattling and the uranium refinement, all that can kind of continue, right? So even little things that you do, buying a buying one of these little things. Like, I don't know where this was made. I'm assuming it was made in China or something like that. But even buying a little flashlight has some effect on world security balance. So, and that goes to things like shelter and safety, right? Having access to all those things that provide your existence. And you get something back from that, ideally. A safe economy, not having wars, right? These are all good things. So they're investments in all of our future. So, third pillar, things you can do, like after you've got that sort of Maslow's hierarchy down, is really income generation, right? And so it kind of goes hand in hand, but almost always you need to have this sort of basis. You need to have this baseline where you're like, I can get a shower, I can get a shave, I can get my teeth brushed and stuff like that. I can sleep well so that I can get a job, right? And then I can start making money. And then you can start laddering up and doing these things with your money, right? But to make money, you need to have this basis in place. You need to have mobility. You need to be able to get between your job and your shelter. You need to have a certain amount of skills training. So you need to have attended school or learn how to do something from somebody, right? An apprenticeship or something. Some jobs are simple enough where they can train you at the job, but again, you have to get trained for anything. Because as I used to tell everyone that I worked with from time to time, because everybody does this, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so hard." Everybody does it. I've done it. It's just like, why is this so hard, right? Why is this so hard to do? If it wasn't hard, they wouldn't pay you to do it, right? This is why we pay each other to do work, because work is difficult. It's not always easy. You can't like. I know there are some people who are like, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah, that's sure, dude. Work is work, right? If you're making money, if you need to make money, you're going to be doing some things that you don't like all the time. Get used to it. That's how the world works. I hope that's not a shock to anybody. If you just want to laze around at home, I hope you have someone to take care of you, to support you, because it's going to be it's going to be difficult for you. So, and yeah, I think it's good to embrace challenge. Human beings love challenges. We really do. So even though people will sometimes complain, "Oh my gosh, my job's so hard," I think at the root of a lot of these sort of job systems is this idea that We like challenge. Human beings love challenges. That's why we play games. So I play very, very challenging game called StarCraft 2. You have to do a lot of clicking on a keyboard, sort of like halfway between playing the piano or playing a musical instrument with one hand while you're using your mouse with the other hand and trying to play chess with your mind at the same time, right? So it's sort of like music and attack, advance, countering things, that sort of thing. It is a real-time strategy game. It is extraordinarily intense to play. It's actually physically draining, but I enjoy doing it. It's very challenging for me. And so people naturally will gravitate toward enjoyable challenges. And so I think that that key in trying to find work that you like is finding an enjoyable challenge, finding challenges that you can finding challenges that you can really sink your teeth in and enjoy, and where those things that are super frustrating, they're not happening that often. The more and more and more they happen, and the more and more you get frustrated at your job, the more you need to think about leaving, finding something else. It may not be for you. You have to find that balance. So other things for income generation that everyone needs to consider is building good credit. Your credit is a vital part of being able to kind of just get through life. Also, it will help you get better jobs. It will help you get better terms for your loans. So building good credit is basically the idea that you manage your credit cards and your loans wisely. So if you get a credit card, don't use very much on the credit card. Try to keep your spending under, say a third of the limit of the card. Keep it down. Pay it every month. Try to pay it off, all of it off, every month or weekly. Like pay it off all the time. There's some really good credit card systems out there. Take advantage of those and build yourself some good credit. Be responsible with your credit. Get loans. Have a loan for a car. Have a loan for, have a mortgage on a home if that's your deal. If you're at that place in your life, and make sure that you pay those things on a regular basis. Pay what you owe as much as you can, and you will keep your credit solid, right? And your credit score will grow or stay good. You do not want to let your credit get thrashed. It's really bad for your income generation, because you're essentially going to be paying more and more for credit products in the future, and you're going to need things like a car or money to borrow for school or something like that. You're going to need to borrow money, most likely. Today's economy is based off of the idea that almost everybody who's an adult kind of uses credit, and we kind of have to have it as part of our the way we get through life. Unless you're very wealthy, in which case maybe you don't need it. Like you don't need a really high credit score if you've got millions and millions of dollars, because you just pay for stuff. That's cool, I guess. But keep in mind that I've heard of employers checking people's credit scores to see if they're, responsible, which I get, right? If someone can't pay their credit card on time, do you think they're going to get to work on time? Do you think that they're going to get your project done on time? It shows what kind of person you are, right? And then last thing for income generation, I'll mention like the foundations of it. Obviously, having a job, right? Like getting a job, doing your job well, that's part of it. I don't want to like sideline that too much, but these are things that kind of help you get there. Building personal relationships, and this is beyond your sort of close friends and your close family. right? Those are the things you need to kind of stay sane, stay healthy in your mind, right? But you also need to build personal relationships with folks that you work with folks in your community. Those things are going to be vital for you. And I know if you're an introvert like me, it can be challenging for you, but there are methods that you can use to do it. It's not that hard. Introverts a lot of times, they're great one-on-one with folks or, with small groups. So find those kinds of situations that you're great in and build those personal relationships with folks. Reach out to people, because when you lose your job, because you probably will at some point, having those personal relationships is going to be critical for you getting a new job afterwards. It's just the way it works. Very few people are just like applying and getting jobs that are quality without having things like references or people to back them up. At the very least, these are folks who can speak up for you if you do land one of those jobs that you're getting through a job posting and you need references for your work, right? Having these folks who believe in you is really important. And so finally, I get to the point of actually talking about the thing that everybody talks about when they think about investing. And that is, what are you going to do with your money that you make? But this is like the last step. It's the last step, but it's the thing like all finance news is focused on. It's the thing that the entire financial industry is focused on. It's the thing that maybe you came here to learn about. And that's cool, right? Because most of my shows are going to be about those things that are about, what do we do with our spare cash? What do we do with our emergency fund? What do we do with our stocks and bonds? What do we do with our loans that we have? But I'm going to end it here, I think, because I wanted to really lay out this idea that investing in yourself is basically saying, I'm going to invest my time and my money into my being, into my skills, into my interpersonal relationships, into the communities that I give back to, into the organizations that I frequent, the companies that I frequent and work with, right? All of these things are investments in me, my community, and my connections. And the interconnectedness of all this stuff. That's how I think about these things. That's how I use an investor's mindset to kind of make my decisions through the day. Like, am I going to go for vacation to Disneyland? And why would I do that? I invest in Disney. I've got Star Wars here. I've got like a Millennium Falcon back here. I've got Miles Morales here. I've got Baby Yoda right there. It's really hard to like do this in reverse. I've got Baby Yoda here. Like, I do appreciate my Disney, right? Do I think Disney's perfect? No. But of the like theme park resort kind of places that I've gone to, it's a heck of a lot of fun. And so like when I go on vacation, I love going there. Give them my money, my support. It's an investment in them. It's an investment that kind of comes back to me also, because I do invest in them, right? So if they're successful, that success can become part of my returns on my stock, right? So I love being a customer of companies that I invest in. It's great. And it fulfills, like it fulfills a lot of these things on this list. So I'll read about movies and entertainment that I'm watching, things that Disney is putting out, things that other competitors are putting out. I can see what's happening. I go to Comic-Con and D23 and other conventions, and I learn about what's coming, right? And I'm both entertaining myself and I'm learning about the company that I invest in. I buy from them. I buy quality things that I enjoy and I display them, and it becomes a part of both my show, my life, and my sort of like who I am, right? And at the same time, I want them to treat their employees better. I want them to give more support to the team members who work in their parks. And so there's a complex interaction there. At what point would I be willing to boycott them? Does it make sense? Would their unions want me to? At, if they're like services unions or they're hotelier unions or I don't know what kind of unions Disney specifically has, but if their unions or if their organizers said, hey, don't buy from us until we get what we need, I would probably say, all right, I'm going to do it. But these things are all very interconnected, right? So instead of doing that, maybe I vote for a $15 minimum wage, which I do, right? I vote for people who support that. I vote for folks who support more than that, actually. I donate to activist groups, and I donate to folks who are trying to get out the vote about, and who have strong, backing for labor. So all of these things kind of go together for me. All of these investments come together. Like, I want Disney to survive. I want them to be good corporate citizens. I want them to be ethical. And so we have to balance, like, how are we as people going to support all of that stuff? Cool. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope this has been helpful for folks. And later on, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how to actually get started with investing. I think that's going to be the next show that I'm going to be doing. So if we've gotten past all this, like thinking about how do we think about investing, we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty of how we actually do it, choosing brokerages, how to start choosing our initial investments, what kind of investing vehicles to use, and things like that. And the kind of considerations that I would use for myself. So again, this is how I think about it. I know everybody has their own kind of way of thinking about it, but I hope it's helpful for you. I'm not giving anyone specific investing advice with this particular show. Well, I never would give anyone specific investing advice, but general investing advice with this sort of thing is what I'm aiming for here. So I'm hoping that that general advice is helpful for you and you can apply it in your own life, looking carefully at your own situation and the world around you, and hopefully try to make it a better place. Try to make it a better place, not just for you, but for everyone else. All right. See you later, paddlers. I'm out. Click on things. There's things to click on.